course, so let's go back then to that top story in which we had just before the break, and that talks to millions of people turning out for the second protest, the second No Kings protest in the US. And for more on this, let's again try and bring in Brooks Spector, a former US diplomat and international relations analyst. And Brooks, thank you so much for your time once again here in SABC News. And just before we got cut off there a bit earlier on, it turns out at least almost at least 7 million people turning out for the second No Kings protest in the US. So what do you make of these numbers?
Well, good evening. Good to be with you. As I tried to say before, 7 million people, more or less, is an extraordinary number. If my history is correct, at the peak of the Vietnam War, the anti-Vietnam War protests managed to bring together about 500,000 people. All right, the population is bigger, but this was an extraordinary undertaking in more than 2,000 cities. Now, I've checked with lots of friends who are in the U.S., some of whom went to the various rallies in places where they live, and they have told me that things were peaceful. There were lots of funny costumes. There were, I think we can sort of tick these things off. There were no rocks thrown, no bottles thrown, no tear gas shot, no mounted police charges. Basically, it was a popular demonstration of annoyance with a range of issues. Some of them are about immigration enforcement policies. Some of them are about violations of a variety of other civil rights and such activities. And some of them were just more generally about the way in which the Trump administration has administered its view about how the presidency should operate. Whether it will influence the president and his party and his administration is a different question, of course. One of the things that they tried to do, the Republican administration tried to do, was to somehow in advance label this set of demonstrations as controlled by Hamas terrorists, the Antifa activists, and other nefarious characters from their perspective, and that there would be rioting and looting and burning of government buildings and all kinds of terrible things. And of course, none of that happened. What it was it wasn't quite a street festival, but it was quite clearly something that you would otherwise take real notice of, that there was serious national dissatisfaction with policies.
And I mean, Brooks, talking about, those allies to U.S. President Donald Trump, they have come out strongly to criticize these demonstrations taking place in the U.S. and some also going as far as calling them the Hate America rally. And one would also then ask, seeing such a large turnout, how will this impact, the U.S. government, also particularly the administration of Donald Trump?
Well, in the short run, it may not have much effect because the Trump administration obviously controls the executive branch. The Republicans have a narrow but decisive majority in both the House and the Senate, and they have sympathizers among more than half of the Supreme Court. But, and we need to keep it in mind, there's always an election around the next corner, and the midterm election for the entirety of the House of Representatives and a third of the Senate is next year, and campaigning is about to begin now because candidates are being selected if you aren't already an incumbent, and there are going to be primary races soon enough. And many people will try to see whether or not this energy, I wanted to say enthusiasm, but a little differently, the energy that is generated by demonstrations like this, can that energy be directed toward the process of elections and voting? And if it can be, and if the Democrats succeed in managing to gain control of the House of Representatives and perhaps even the Senate, that will change the political calculus in the U.S. by a considerable degree. Many of the things that the Trump administration wants to do will be stopped, or at least slowed down. Keep in mind also, currently there's a government shutdown in the United States. There's no budget, so therefore many government employees have been sent home, and major functions of government are put on hold. If you're flying in an airplane, you should be aware of the fact, for example, that air traffic controllers are working because they're considered essential personnel, but they're not being paid. And so there are people who are paying attention to the fact that there are things, not everything is the way it should be.
And Brooks, what do you make of US President Donald Trump's response? I mean, he's taken to his Truth social media page and basically using an AI-generated video of him flying over these protests and then spilling what looks like brown mud on demonstrations. Are you surprised at all by his response?
Well, I'm no longer surprised by any response that he generates or his team generates on almost any issue. But this was, and I'm not sure that was meant to be mud either as part of the problem. It may have been something else. This represents, by my calculations, the lowest, most vulgar version of political rhetoric that I can remember in my life. And and I have heard other commentators in the U.S. say something very similar. They just shake their heads and they go, what can you expect anymore? Does that kind of thing matter? Well, to his supporters, they're probably going, oh, that's ugly, but I cheer him on. But to everybody else, it's sort of like, what is wrong with this man? And that's kind of how it's being portrayed. It's funny in a very vulgar and crass kind of way, but it certainly doesn't contribute to any sort of intelligent or sophisticated or coherent discussion of political issues or complex problems. I mean, it's simply a way of walking up to the opponents and slapping them across the face.
All right, Brooks, thank you so much for your time and for your comments. That's Brooks Spector there, former US diplomat and international analyst, giving us his thoughts when it comes to the second No Kings protest, which took place in the US.